Welcome to the Itinerary. Augmented, virtual and mixed reality are each incredibly fast-growing sectors within the technology industry, and different ways in which we engage with and use these experiences is changing every day. In tourism, the use of these technologies is still in its infancy, but the opportunities are endless. And thanks to the pandemic and efforts to be more environmental, questions are also being raised on how tourism can be achieved remotely. With me today to discuss this topic are some movers and shakers in the digital realm. Mark Billinghurst, a professor at University of Auckland, who recently led a Tourism Without Travel seminar exploring how AR can transform the tourism industry. Anna Calver, General Manager of Marketing and Communications at Wellington, New Zealand, who was behind WellTown, a world-first virtual reality game featuring tourism hotspots of our capital. Andrew Adele, General Manager of Australia for Tourism New Zealand, who was behind the innovative marketing campaign Play NZ, where Aotearoa temporarily became a computer game. And Trent Yeo, Managing Director of ZipTrek Eco Tours, who has launched the world's first augmented reality zipline tour. Welcome everyone. So, in case our viewers do not know, what is augmented reality, virtual reality and mixed reality? Tell us all about it.
That's a great question. So you can imagine virtual reality, the goal of virtual reality is to try and immerse you in a computer generated space and to replace your entire real world with computer graphics. And then in contrast, with augmented reality, the goal is to enhance your experience in the real world. And so to take computer graphics and other digital content and seamlessly blend it with the real world. And then you can imagine augmented and virtual reality is kind of on a continuum. One end is virtual reality replacing the real world. Augmented reality is kind of in the middle. And the other end is the real world with no enhancements. And mixed reality is like an overarching umbrella of those two. So it seamlessly combines digital and virtual content in the real world.
Now, do computer games fall under this technology because you are, in a sense, immersing yourself into a virtual world?
Oh, I would say definitely. It depends on the game. You know, if you're playing a game on your mobile phone, like Flappy Bird or some other game, that's not really that immersive. But if you're playing a game in a VR headset, of course, that's VR. Or if you're playing a game on a large screen and you feel yourself sucked into the real world. The really interesting thing, of course, is the augmented reality games like Pokemon Go that involve you moving around the real world and combining elements of the real world in the gameplay as well.
How are these technologies changing the way we promote a destination?
Yeah, it's really interesting and really interesting times to be in marketing, but also in travel and destination marketing. What we're seeing with things like VR and AR, etc., is really that idea of exploration, where travel and tourism, it's the heart of what you do, but also entertainment and experience and the idea of play. And when that's brought together in the virtual world in this situation, it really does help unlock that consumer to have a lot of fun, really look beyond what they might know about a destination, and really bring that destination to life. So something we've done at Tourism New Zealand is really focus on the storytelling element of video games in this particular example. But what you can do is you can weave in a storyline talking about a destination and use these technologies in really new and innovative ways to bring that to life.
I think that's a really great point Andrew's made about the storytelling, and especially with augmented reality, is you can tell stories of the past that may not still be in the present. So, for example, there's a New Zealand company called Haimo that has been using augmented reality to provide visualization on the old gun emplacements around New Zealand, and shows how these were built 100 years ago, but using augmented reality, you can see how they might have looked like when they were first built rather than they are today. So it's a really great opportunity to take the technology and bring the stories of the past to life in the present through overlaying that digital content in the real world.
Yeah, it also quite often this space is talked about in relation to the growth of video games, so the rise in video games. And while that's one element of it, it's really using the technologies that are available to bring to life those stories. So gaming has grown in the need to socialize, a universal truth of needing to play. And what we actually saw during the pandemic period was the growth of play, things like puzzles, walking the dog, board games, and video games was very much one element of it. So what we did at Tourism New Zealand is bring to life Play NZ. Now, Play NZ was the first virtual walkthrough of a country. and allowed us using video games as a storytelling device to really weave interesting story about people and place over a sort of 9-minute edit. Really sort of a fun way of talking about a destination, which took or brought New Zealand to life when people couldn't travel.
I think what a lot of people in New Zealand don't realise is that no one around the world really knows that Wellington even exists. So even when they think about New Zealand, they don't really know about Wellington. So when we try and stand out and reach international markets, it's really via using these really innovative technologies that it allows us to do so. And in Wellington, we've got a really creative, very strong screen and technology community. So we figured, why not use some of these amazing new immersive technologies and create a gamified experience of Wellington to reach audiences all around the world who are adopters of this technology but don't really know that Wellington exists. So what we did is we created, I think, probably the most crazy VR game ever called WellTown, where we created this outrageous city guide that basically was your avatar that you became, and then you could explore Wellington via all of these different experiences. So for example, you could join the Dawn Chorus and get right up close to beautiful native birds up Matarangi, Mount Victoria. You could dive under the water in Wellington Harbour and get up close to a whale, a visiting whale. And each time you kind of did one of these experiences, you would get a new creative adornment and I guess be closer to a true Wellingtonian. So it was a way for us to reach people. It was available it is available for free on the Steam and Oculus VR stores within a couple of weeks of launching. It was one of the top performing free downloadable VR games, and I think reached about 20,000 downloads and got us lots of media coverage around the world.
Now, come on, Andrew, tell us, will Play NZ ever become an actual game? Because I hear a lot of people are keen on that idea.
Yeah, we used to joke about it. Play NZ in real life, or IRL. The way to Play NZ is actually to travel and experience New Zealand as the world's biggest open world game. And I think it leads into one of the key points around this for travel and tourism is, this virtual reality gamifying of a destination is really about opening the door for people to travel in the future. So it's a great way of engaging our audience. It's a great and innovative way to bring to life our destinations. As you heard from Anna earlier, really entertaining, really fun and playful way of bringing to life a destination, but it'll never replace the opportunity to travel. If anything, it just builds desire and desirability to travel in the future. And we know, particularly from a New Zealand perspective, how challenging it can be to get people on a long haul flight to travel out to New Zealand. So, filling up that idea and topping up that idea of wanderlust, travelling in the future and exploring New Zealand is hopefully something which we're inspiring people to do. So never say never. Play NZ may become a game, but for the moment it's just an invitation to experience our people and place.
Andrew, I think this is the Play NZ was such a success. I think there's an interesting point in that about the extension of that experience from a pre-travel experience to an actual experience. And it would be interesting to go through a process of, could we augment or mixed reality a game or interaction on the ground? So it's what I call the peak experience of the real thing. And then carry that experience into a virtual experience for post travel, and sort of like sort of going up the curve to the peak experience and coming out. And so using virtual for the other pieces and augmented or mixed reality possibility in the middle. I just think that's a really cool idea. And once again, I dream about this idea.
Yes, it's similar to, the photo on top of the Eiffel Tower. That's very much a 2D flat image of that experience. But imagine being able to, experience something, take part in something, but take it away and then relive it through a sort of virtual or augmented reality example. I think it's a way of bringing that experience to life and keeping it alive for so much longer.
Now, Trent, could you please give us the background on Kereru Interactive?
We're a zipline tourism operator in beautiful Queenstown, and one of the most important things as a practitioner is the sense of place. So we, as much as I'm interested in all of the technology, we're really interested in immersing people in what I call a 95-5, which is 5% digital overlay and 95% this is amazing. I'm interested in this case with a exploration of an avatar again, a Kereru called Kereru. And she takes you on a tour and assists you to learn about the place and get a better understanding of where we live and why we live here. And basically you go on a zipline tour and you have augmented reality delivered by tablet at this stage, with a view that it will be wearable in the near future as the technology evolves.
Are you a lone ranger, or is there a chance and likelihood that you're going to get some competition out there?
Yeah, I mean, competition's good. We would totally encourage anyone and everyone to get involved. I say about these technologies, you don't know until you try. We are super early days, and I'd love to see some technology and tourism mashups. So those that can talk across those segments to be able to get together and try and build experiences either peak or post experiences through digital technologies.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting what you've been doing, Trent. As a flagship operator out of Queenstown, really bringing to life that digital extension of it. I think particularly for New Zealand, which has has to compete on the global stage and travel. I think it's important that we continue to bring through that level of innovation that and clever thinking, creative thinking that takes us that step further. One thing we found with Play NZ, we had a sort of long form and short form around that video game idea and the virtual walkthrough. Once people went through that, they went to our hub, Play NZ. .com, and then within that we had 18 180-degree videos which you could experience, and what we found when working with operators is there was a lot of actually existing content out there, but harder to knit it together as an overall experience that people could explore one after the other. So I think one of the things we need to do overall as an industry is build our digital capability in this space that sets us apart. Then we can compete, on the world stage.
COVID-19 and environmental pressures has some consideration around how we can move tourism online. So I ask you all if that even is possible. Mark, we'll start with you, as you recently led discussions on remote tourism.
Definitely that's possible. I have a small startup company in New Zealand called Envisager, and we're doing just that. We're doing live stream 360 tours to people around the world, and you can do it through your web browser or through a teleconferencing platform. So it enables people anywhere in the world to connect into a location. I think the really exciting thing is being able to connect the three elements of location and person and story into a single experience. You've also seen a number of other companies working in that space. So, for example, Airbnb have got the Airbnb online experiences, and Amazon have just launched the Amazon experiences of Amazon Explore, which allow you to do live guided tours or one-on-one experiences remotely. So there's a lot of companies now starting to look at that. The technology is almost there, so I think you'll see a lot more possibilities in that space. The exciting thing for New Zealand tourism operators, it means that now they can reach into a global market without necessarily having to leave the country. So, for example, with Trent's company, it will be relatively easy for him to be able to fly 360 cameras down the zip lines and have people that may never be able to come to New Zealand still have a little bit of an experience what it's like to go down that tour and have somewhat of an experience of what that will be like, and maybe motivate them to come to New Zealand in the future.
Yeah, if I can add there as well, I think sometimes New Zealand isn't fully aware of how small we are on the global stage from a travel perspective, making up 0.03% of global tourism. So, it's a big market out there, and as Mark said, ability to be able to communicate and reach global audiences is fantastic. I think with the pandemic and implications around travel was really a jolt in this of the use of this technology, and we've seen it accelerated since then. So, and it's not just from a consumer perspective, very much a business perspective as well. So, growth of virtual conferences has been one, virtual roadshows for travel agents is another area that we've seen a growth in. And while it enables you to sort of engage with the audience and keep those leads, warm and hot for the future, it is really hopeful in the future that people can travel and will want to travel to have that true experience. And as Trent said earlier, that sort of wow factor that comes through, that we know really best comes from that point of face-to-face, in-person, as you know, as a really important part of that travel experience.
Would we really want to stop people from physically coming to New Zealand? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it has a place, and I think that it has an increasing space in opportunity. I think that it literally, until we can plug in our back of our head to get a matrix style plug-in, I don't believe that it's not going to be the same, but it's not meant to be the same, and that's the point, is that it could be better for some people in some situations. And the COVID thing has totally expressed the massive opportunity in storytelling through tourism experiences that can be achieved right now, and also fueling future demand for actual travel and getting people really deeply into the dreaming stage. So I think that will it replace what we do? No. And especially in a place like us, will it add value and broaden what can be offered whilst here? Absolutely, yes. But we have to be really focused on what the opportunities are and be clear about what our objectives are going to be, because this isn't for everyone all the time.
I think the one interesting thing also that mentioned, Trent, is that there are some people that will never be able to come to New Zealand. You know, there's one of my friends in Australia, she's a 90-year-old lady on an oxygen tank, and she's never going to come to New Zealand. She can barely leave her apartment. So I went to her place one day and I took her a VR headset and I showed her around the Taj Mahal, and she was just blown away. She did a walkthrough and 360 images of Taj Mahal, and she said, you know, it's always been on my bucket list. I've always wanted to go to India and visit the Taj Mahal, and I can never do that. And so this technology now allows tourism operators in New Zealand the ability to reach people they'll never be able to reach and expand their markets without necessarily a great deal of cost, and without also the ecological footprint of having, you know, 10 times as many people coming into New Zealand.
The equity aspects around that, I think that's really important to consider, how more people can access some part of New Zealand, no matter what that is for them. And I know that there's a guy doing this for cancer patients, kids, and he raises money to do these experiences so that he can give back to the kids, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, I think I'm with Trent on this one. I think technology is an amazing thing as a way to get a sense of a place, and for people who've got access issues who will never be able to visit here, but it will never be a replacement for a real world experience. I think it is a wonderful taste, but I don't think the reality of, or the image put by like Minority Report is going to be a reality for our world. I think people really do crave human interaction, those real world experiences, but it is a great way to connect people with our experiences, with our people, and with Aotearoa when they're not able to come here in person.
How we go about use of this technology and how we bring to life what's important to us. So manaakitanga, our generosity of spirit, and hosting, and kaitiakitanga, which are guardianship. Both examples there, which we've talked about earlier, around accessibility and that openness to welcome people, but also that protection and guardianship of people and place as well. So, you know, that can live in a virtual world in the examples we've talked about, but also hoping to represent them and truly represent them in person. So I think it's going to be a partnership between the two. And, you know, you're going to see it as a growth area, but unlikely to replace, but ultimately enhance and bring to life, firstly, our storytelling, our ability to attract people to travel around the world to New Zealand, and then increasingly add and enhance that experience when they're on the ground as well.
Finally, I think it's safe to say that we've barely scratched the surface when it comes to virtual tourism, and I've heard some of you say, yes, we're in those early stages. So whatever shape or form that may take, what are your predictions for the future?
Oh, well, I predict that within 5 years' time, it'll be possible for you to sit at home anywhere in the world and take a virtual tour to a location anywhere in New Zealand and feel like you're almost there. And so that would be able to create that kind of immersive experience that you get of being in that environment.
I think we're going to see more of what Zip Trek are offering. I think we're going to see a lot more use of VR, AR, XR experiences linked in with those real world experiences to really enhance and engage and grab people's attention. We're already seeing it in galleries and museums. And I think we're going to see it a lot more in how people explore a destination. I mean, you can imagine one of the things we're looking at the moment, for example, is imagine walking around the city with your phone and getting these layers of AR storytelling that tell the stories of mana whenua, of our film history, of our architecture, that just at the moment you just won't get just via a normal stroll through the streets.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really exciting. I think you're going to see a normalising of use of digital, virtual reality, augmented reality, and then as we talked about, mixed reality as well. You know, even in the last year, even if you just look at something like QR codes and the growth and the adoption of them from mass population, I think it's obviously significant. But as wearables become more frequent, you're just going to see it completely sort of merged into one, integrated into everyday life, but also obviously into the travel experience. So it's going to be less of a where's it going to go, but more in the sense of it's part of the here and now. So I think Mark's prediction on 5 years is going to be really interesting to be able to explore a country or a location and country through virtual means, but also when people are on the ground as well, it will really bring it to life in a way that we haven't seen before. So really exciting time from a digital and technology perspective, but also travel and tourism as well.
We've talked a lot about the product side of XR technologies, and I actually think that's only part of the opportunity that exists in these technologies. And one example I would say is the idea of Google Lens offering tour information or directions and what is that activity, what is that thing, how much is that burger, through phone-based augmented or mixed reality opportunities. So that's one example of the many ways in which the travel experience will be changed by making it better. I think that in terms of the product side, we're still probably, in my opinion, in the trough of disappointment on the innovation scale. And I know that the cost impediments, size and capability impediments of wearables is still there, although in Moore's law. I believe that this will help us to improve the opportunities that exist, but I think it's going to take a little bit of time. The thing is, we've got to start experimenting now with a strategy for doing so and not just let it happen to us, because it won't just happen to us.
Basically, these new technologies are one amazing form of storytelling and a way to engage people, but they're still not the replacement for the types of forms that already exist. So I think people just need to remember that they're a really clever and creative way to give people that more immersive experience, that richer and deeper experience, but they're still just one of many. So I think in terms of a form of innovation, it's really cool and it's really great, but it shouldn't replace some of the other methods that you've got in terms of engaging people. And there's certainly no replacement from just giving people an amazing welcome and an amazing real world experience.
We've talked so far today about how technology could be used to improve tourism, but there's also a huge opportunity in New Zealand for New Zealand companies to take the lead in providing digital tourism experiences and market those as products out to other companies. So not just using technology to enhance our own tourism experiences, but look at how we can be used as a test bed for products coming from the software industry or tech industry that could be used to sell to other tourism operators globally. And there's a huge opportunity in that space for our country, I think.
Yeah, I'll just add, I think sometimes a space, whether it be in video games or virtual reality, is sometimes seen as, I don't know enough about it, it's too challenging, it's only for youth, etc. What I'd say is it's a hugely creative space, a lot of innovation going on, and a lot of opportunity to bring new ideas to life. So I'd be seeking to, get involved early, help be part of that conversation, cross-pollinate ideas from other industries and other sectors, and find your angle. And as one earlier in the session, it is around storytelling. It's one option of a storytelling. What can you take from one, add it to another, and create something new? So I think it's exciting times ahead, and ultimately just take the step to get involved.
I'm just interested, as the others have said, in the audiences listening to this, in what it's going to take for us to explore these things so that it adds meaningful value for New Zealand. And I think it's to Mark's point around carbon, it's extremely important. To Andrew's point about manaakitanga and people-to-people relationships, I think it's also important. I'm interested in how we can get people outside tourism, in tourism, as I call the experience economy, to use and utilize what we what we have as a business opportunity or a monetization of technology, to test that and move it forward, and to collaborate and share. So I'm sort of like a call out to everybody to say, who wants to get involved? Let's try to do that and bring them in with open arms.
Let's wrap up our show now with this week's success story. Ka kite anō.
When we were approached to create a VR experience of Wellington and to gamify it, it was a world first. The inner geek in me was just fizzing.
We wanted to show what Wellington is all about. It's fun, it's creative, it's vibrant. So we want to give people a sense of that so they actually come here, not in virtual reality, but in actual reality.
This experience was a really unique opportunity to bring two really cool ideas together of, promoting Wellington as a city, but also Wrestler's really unique and human-focused storytelling.
We're choosing experiences that sum up Wellington. There's hundreds.
We whittled it down basically from going, what were the best 6 experiences?
We approach everything usually just with a creative brainstorm around this table here, but we found quickly that with VR we needed to get up and move about. And so we created this thing called body storming.
And we actually physically experienced what the scene would look like before we developed it in virtual reality.
And it's an awesome imaginative experience. People could start to see and feel what it's like to be inside of a world. That helped with taking the client along on the journey as well.
So when creating WellTown, we had a whole bunch of different technologies and mediums that were put into practice, and so that required a really interesting pipeline in terms of the build. So we had photogrammetry, 360 video, CG, motion capture with facial motion capture as well. And all of that stuff required some really interesting approaches to how we actually built the whole experience.
Unreal allowed us to bring in these 3 different data sets and combine them into one asset. This allowed us to create our living, breathing guide.
Sound's really important in a VR experience because it enables the user to ground themselves. We created a 7.1 sound mix that gave a rich directionalized sound so that the user could really place the objects they were seeing to the audio they were hearing.
Having Wellington Tourism and Wellington City Council come behind WellTown project really shows that they believe in the creative industry. They really believe in growing the tech industry.
We really wanted to use what the technology can do, so we thought, why not create a gamified tour of Wellington? The technology is now at a stage where you can literally take someone into this incredible immersive world and give people a real sense of what it's like to be somewhere.
Trying something new and doing it for the first time for a city that you love, there's nothing better.